I need to tell you something. I've never told anyone outside of my family. And I'm only telling it now because my daughter said I should. She said, "Dad, other people need to hear this." So here I am. My name is Robert Cole. I'm 59 years old. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. Not the honky-tonk, tourist trap Nashville you see on Instagram, but the real one. The one where people wake up at 5 in the morning, drive 40 minutes to work, and spend their whole lives building something they hope will matter. I am not a flashy man. Never have been. I drive a 2014 Ford F-150 with a cracked dashboard and a coffee stain on the passenger seat that's been there since 2019. I own 3 pairs of dress shoes, and I've had 2 of them since the Obama administration. My idea of a good Friday night is a glass of bourbon, my back porch, and the sound of nothing in particular. I also happen to control more money than most people will ever see in 3 lifetimes. But we'll get to that. First, let me tell you about my daughter, Lily. Lily is 30 years old. She teaches kindergarten at an elementary school in Franklin, just south of Nashville. She has her mother's laugh, big, unguarded, the kind that makes strangers smile in grocery stores. Her mother passed when Lily was 9, breast cancer, fast and cruel. And after that, it was just the 2 of us. I raised that girl on scrambled eggs, Saturday morning cartoons, and the firm belief that kindness was not weakness. I coached her soccer team, even though I knew nothing about soccer. I sat in the front row of every school play, every graduation, every milestone, holding a phone I barely knew how to use, trying to record everything so we'd never lose it. She was the whole point. She still is. So when she called me on a Thursday night in October, sobbing so hard she couldn't get a full sentence out, my heart did something I can only describe as stopping. I was on my back porch. The air had that sharp fall bite to it, the kind that smells like wood smoke and dried leaves. Nashville in October is beautiful if you stop long enough to notice. I had been nursing a bourbon and watching a neighbor's dog dig up something in the yard across the street, which, honestly, was more entertaining than anything on television. Then my phone rang. Dad. That's all she got out. Just that one word. And I knew. I sat up straight, put the glass down. Lily, talk to me. What came out next, between the crying and the catching of breath and the long silences where she was just trying to hold herself together, was this. She had been at dinner. A family dinner at the Whitfield estate. That's her in-laws, Gerald and Diane Whitfield. Old money from Brentwood, the kind of Brentwood neighborhood where the driveways are longer than some city blocks, and the mailboxes alone probably cost more than my first car. Her husband, Connor Whitfield, 32 years old, had taken her there to celebrate his parents' 36th wedding anniversary. There were about 40 people there, extended family, friends of the family, business associates. The kind of crowd where everyone is dressed like they have somewhere more important to be. Lily had mentioned at the dinner table that she was thinking about going back to school, getting her master's degree in education. She was excited about it. She'd been researching programs for weeks and had talked to me about it just the Sunday before. And Diane Whitfield, Connor's mother, had set down her wine glass, looked at Lily, and said, in front of every single person at that table, "Sweetheart, let's be realistic. Women from your background don't really belong at this table, let alone advising other people on how to educate their children. Connor should have married someone from his own world, someone more suitable." I went completely still on that porch. The neighbor's dog was still digging. The bourbon was still sitting there. Everything looked exactly the same as it had 30 seconds ago. Nothing was the same. "And Connor?" I asked. My voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. My daughter knows that voice. It's the voice I use when I am working very hard not to become someone I don't want to be. Lily took a shaky breath. He looked at his plate. Dad. He didn't say a word. There it was. not just the insult. The insult I could almost understand. People like Diane Whitfield have been walking the earth since the beginning of time, looking down from whatever hill they think they own. That's not new. That's just an old, tired kind of ugliness. But my son-in-law, the man I welcomed into my life, the man who stood at an altar 2 years ago and told my daughter he would protect her, he sat there, looked at his plate, and said absolutely nothing. I found out later, and this part nearly finished me, that when they got home that night, Connor told Lily she was being too sensitive. He told her his mother didn't mean it the way it sounded. And then, the part that made something inside me go very cold and very clear, he told her she should call Diane the next morning and apologize for leaving the dinner early, for making the evening uncomfortable. He wanted my daughter to apologize to the woman who had just humiliated her in front of 40 people. I want you to sit with that for a moment. Now, I need you to understand something about me. I did not build what I have by being reckless. I did not get here by acting on emotion. I grew up with nothing. I mean, actual nothing. The kind where you learn to be grateful for a full tank of gas because it doesn't happen often. My father worked in a plant outside of Murfreesboro his entire adult life and retired with a handshake and a watch that stopped working 6 months later. I watched him. I learned what I did not want. So I worked. I saved. I invested. Not in the loud, flashy way. Not in the way that gets you quoted in magazines and invited to speak at conferences. Quietly, methodically. Through an investment holding company I'd built over 30 years called Cole Capital, registered through a structure that most people couldn't find even if they knew to look. I didn't own things people could see. I owned pieces of things, silent pieces, majority pieces. The kind that don't require you to show up to a board meeting unless you choose to. I had built an empire in the background of my own life, and almost nobody knew it. Including, apparently, the Whitfields. I let Lily cry a little more. I told her I loved her. I told her she had done nothing wrong, that she had never been anything less than extraordinary, and that no dining room full of people with nice silverware could change that. Then I asked her one question. What's the name of Gerald's company? She paused, confused, the way people get when a conversation suddenly shifts directions. Whitfield Development Group. Why? Dad, what are you? Go get some sleep, sweetheart. I love you. I hung up, sat there for a minute in the October dark. The neighbor's dog had finally found whatever it was looking for and trotted back inside. Smart dog. I picked up my laptop from the porch table. I opened Cole Capital's portfolio management system, the one my attorney, Dean Park, and I had built out years ago, organized by industry, by state, by acquisition date. I typed 3 words into the search bar. Whitfield Development Group. And there it was. Acquired 11 years ago during a distressed asset sweep following the 2008 aftermath. I had purchased a controlling equity stake, 54%, through 2 layers of holding companies when the Whitfields were bleeding cash and desperate for a quiet investor who wouldn't interfere with operations. They never knew who was behind the acquisition. That was the arrangement. That was, in fact, the entire appeal for them at the time. I had never exercised a single shareholder right, never attended a meeting, never made a call. I let Gerald Whitfield run his company, and I collected returns and forgot about it the way you forget about a storage unit you're paying for across town. 54%. For 11 years. I stared at that screen for a long time. The bourbon had gone warm. I didn't care. Now, here's where I want to be honest with you, because I think honesty matters, especially in a story like this one. I am not a violent man. I am not a vindictive man. I have walked away from more confrontations in my life than I've engaged in, and I've always believed that the best response to most provocations is patience and a good night's sleep. But there is a line. There is a line that, when crossed, doesn't make me angry. It makes me quiet, focused, the way a very cold morning makes everything sharp and perfectly clear. Diane Whitfield crossed that line the moment she looked at my daughter, the girl I raised alone, the girl I went without so she wouldn't have to, the girl who has more grace in her left hand than that entire dining room would see in a generation, and told her she wasn't good enough. And Connor Whitfield put a lock on that line when he handed Lily a phone and told her to apologize for it. I didn't yell. I didn't drive to Brentwood. I didn't do anything dramatic. I made one call to Dean Park. It was almost 11 o'clock at night. Dean picked up on the second ring because in 30 years he has learned that when I call after 10, it matters. I told him what happened, all of it. Then I told him what I wanted. There was a pause on the other end. Dean has been my attorney through more deals than either of us can count, and I have never once heard him sound nervous. He sounded a little nervous. "Robert," he said carefully, "you understand what you're describing." "I do." "You've held that position for 11 years without making a single move." "I know exactly how long I've held it." Another pause. Then, "When do you want to start?" "Monday morning," I said. 8 o'clock. I closed the laptop, picked up the bourbon, took a long sip. The thing about having power is that it's almost useless if you use it for yourself. I'd known that for years. I'd watched men burn everything they'd built, chasing ego, chasing status, building monuments to their own importance. I'd never had much interest in any of that. But for my daughter, I was about to remind an entire family, very quietly, very precisely, exactly whose table they had actually been sitting at for the past 11 years. And they didn't even know it yet. Monday was 4 days away. I went to bed, slept better than I had in years. I woke up Friday morning with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. You know that feeling when you've been putting off cleaning out the garage for years, and then one Saturday you just wake up and think, today's the day? It was like that. Except, instead of throwing out old lawn chairs and boxes of Christmas decorations nobody wants, I was about to restructure an entire company and rearrange the power dynamics of a family that had spent decades believing they were untouchable. Same energy though. I made coffee, sat on the porch, watched the sun come up over Nashville the way it does in late October. Slow, golden, like it's taking its time deciding whether the day is worth the effort. I understood the feeling. My phone buzzed around 7. Text from Lily. "Dad, I'm okay. Please don't worry about me. Love you." I stared at that message for a long time. Don't worry about me. That's what she said. That's what she always said. Even when her mother was dying, and Lily was 9 years old, and confused and terrified, she had looked at me with those big eyes and said, "I'm okay, Daddy. Don't be sad." She had spent her whole life trying to make things easier for everyone else. And the one time she needed someone to make things easier for her, the one time she needed her husband to open his mouth and say, "That's my wife you're talking about," he had looked at his plate. I typed back, "I know you are, sweetheart. Talk soon." Then I got to work. First things first. Know exactly what you're dealing with. I spent Friday, Saturday, and Sunday doing something I hadn't done in years. A full operational review of Whitfield Development Group. I pulled every document I had access to as majority shareholder. Financials, board minutes, employment contracts, expense reports, organizational charts, vendor agreements. Dean sent over additional materials by Saturday afternoon. The man works fast when he knows I'm serious. And what I found was interesting. Gerald Whitfield had been running this company for 23 years. On paper, it looked respectable. Mid-size commercial real estate development, mostly retail and mixed-use properties across Middle Tennessee. Decent returns, steady growth. Nothing spectacular, but nothing embarrassing either. But when you looked closer, and I looked very close, patterns started to emerge. Gerald had been treating the company like a personal piggy bank for at least a decade. Country club memberships billed as client entertainment. A beach house in Destin, Florida, listed as a corporate retreat facility, despite being used exclusively by the Whitfield family. Diane's Mercedes lease, Connor's BMW. Even the catering for that anniversary dinner, where my daughter was humiliated. I found the invoice. $18,000, billed to Whitfield Development Group as a stakeholder appreciation event. They threw a party to celebrate themselves and wrote it off as a business expense. That's actually impressive in a pathetic sort of way. None of it was technically illegal. Sloppy, definitely. Ethically questionable, absolutely. The kind of thing that wouldn't survive an IRS audit if someone decided to request one. But that wasn't even the interesting part. The interesting part was Gerald's employment contract. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood it correctly. Dean confirmed my reading on Sunday morning. As CEO, Gerald Whitfield served at the pleasure of the majority shareholder. His contract had been written 11 years ago during the acquisition, when the Whitfields were desperate and didn't have leverage to negotiate better terms. It included a clause, Section 7.3, buried on page 14, that gave the majority shareholder the right to restructure executive leadership with board approval. I controlled 3 of the 5 board seats, had for 11 years, never exercised them, never showed up, never sent a representative. The Whitfields had probably forgotten those seats even existed. They were about to remember. Sunday night, I called Dean one more time. Walk me through it again, I said. Monday morning, you notify the board of an emergency session. As majority shareholder, you have the right to call one with 24 hours notice. But given you control the board, we can expedite. By noon, we present the restructuring proposal. Gerald Whitfield is removed as CEO and reassigned to a newly created position, Vice President of Special Projects, at 60% of his current salary. The board approves because you control the board. By end of business Monday, it's done. And the new CEO? She's ready. I spoke with her this afternoon. She's flying in tomorrow morning. Good. Dean paused. Robert, I have to ask, are you sure about this choice? There are dozens of qualified candidates who could. I'm sure. She's going to walk into that building and they're going to. I know exactly what they're going to do. That's the point. Another pause. Understood. I hung up and poured myself a bourbon. Smaller than usual. I wanted to be sharp tomorrow. This isn't about revenge, I told myself. This is about consequences. There's a difference. I almost believed it. Monday morning, 8 o'clock, October 24th. I was wearing my one good suit, navy blue, bought for Lily's wedding 2 years ago. I'd had it dry cleaned on Saturday. I figured if I was going to dismantle someone's entire sense of self, I should at least look presentable. The call went through to Whitfield Development Group's main office at 8:04 a.m. Whitfield Development Group, this is Patricia. How may I direct your call? This is Robert Cole. I need to speak with Gerald Whitfield immediately. I'm sorry, Mr. Cole. Mr. Whitfield is in a meeting. Can I take a message or... Patricia, I need you to interrupt that meeting. Tell him his majority shareholder is on the line. He'll take the call. Silence. A long silence. Then, I'm sorry. Did you say majority shareholder? I did. Tell him it's urgent. I heard the hold music click on, some soft jazz thing that was probably supposed to be calming. It wasn't. 43 seconds later, Gerald Whitfield picked up. This is Gerald Whitfield. His voice was confused, slightly annoyed. The voice of a man who had been interrupted from something he considered important. I'm not sure I understand. Patricia said something about a majority shareholder. Good morning, Gerald. My name is Robert Cole. I've owned 54% of your company's equity for the past 11 years. We've never spoken before, but I thought it was time we changed that. Dead silence. I could almost hear his brain working, trying to process, trying to figure out if this was some kind of joke. I wasn't aware. The acquisition documentation was all handled through intermediary holding companies. Yes, that was intentional. I preferred to remain anonymous. I've been very happy with that arrangement until recently. I see. Gerald's voice had changed. Careful now. Measured. Well, Mr. Cole, it's certainly a pleasure to finally speak with you. If you'd like to arrange a meeting, I'm sure we could. That won't be necessary. This won't take long. I let that sentence hang in the air for a moment. Let him feel the weight of it. I'm calling to inform you that I'm exercising my rights under Section 7.3 of your employment agreement. Effective immediately, I'm restructuring the executive leadership of Whitfield Development Group. You're being reassigned from CEO to a new position, Vice President of Special Projects. Your salary will be adjusted accordingly. Silence. Then, I'm sorry. What did you just say? I said you're no longer the CEO of this company. A board meeting is being convened this morning to formalize the decision. Given that I control the board, I don't anticipate any difficulties. Gerald's voice came back sharp, angry. The voice of a man who had never been told no in his life. Now wait just a minute. You can't just call me out of the blue and... Gerald, I want to be very clear with you. My voice was calm, almost friendly. I have spent the last 3 days reviewing your financials. I have documentation of approximately $2.3 million in personal expenses that you've billed to this company over the past decade. Country club memberships, vehicle leases, a beach house that hasn't hosted a single business function in its entire existence. Even the catering bill for your anniversary dinner last Thursday. The silence on the other end was different now, heavier. Now, I'm not an accountant, and I'm certainly not a lawyer, but I suspect the IRS might find some of this documentation very interesting, especially if someone were to file a formal complaint. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you a choice. You can accept the restructuring gracefully, keep your position in the company at a reduced capacity, and continue to collect a paycheck. Or you can fight me, and I will bury you in audits, investigations, and legal fees that will make your current lifestyle completely unsustainable. I've been building my portfolio for 30 years, Gerald. I have resources you cannot imagine, and I have patience you definitely cannot imagine. More silence. I could hear him breathing, heavy, uneven. The new CEO will be arriving at your office at noon today. I suggest you have your things moved to a smaller office by then. Who? Gerald's voice was barely above a whisper now. Who is the new CEO? Her name is Marianne Lawson. She grew up in the same neighborhood I did, outside of Murfreesboro. I put her through business school 20 years ago. She's been running a $90 million real estate fund in Atlanta for the past 8 years. She's brilliant, she's tough, and she's going to turn your company into something actually worth owning. I paused. Let that sink in. You'll meet her soon. I think you'll find her very direct. I could hear Gerald trying to form words, trying to find something to say, some argument, some leverage, some way out of the corner I had just backed him into. He found nothing. I'll be in touch if I need anything further, I said. Have a good day, Gerald. I hung up. Sat there for a moment in my living room. The morning sun was coming through the windows now, making patterns on the hardwood floor. Somewhere outside, a bird was singing. Life was just going on. Normal. Ordinary. That felt good, I thought. That felt very, very good. But I wasn't done. That was just the foundation. The structure was still being built. Tuesday morning, I got a call from Marianne. I'm in, she said. Corner office. Very nice view. Gerald moved out, around 11 this morning. Didn't say a word to anyone. Just packed up his things and walked to a smaller office on the second floor. The staff doesn't know what to think. How are they treating you? Confused, mostly. A few of them seem relieved, actually. I don't think Gerald was particularly beloved. He's not particularly lovable. Marianne laughed. We'd known each other for 25 years. She'd grown up 3 streets away from me. Daughter of a single mom who worked double shifts at a diner. I'd watched her claw her way through community college, then a state university, then an MBA program I helped pay for. She was one of the smartest people I'd ever met, and one of the toughest. She was also, not coincidentally, exactly the kind of person Diane Whitfield would look down on. Robert, Marianne said, her voice turning serious. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Always. This isn't really about business, is it? This is personal. I was quiet for a moment. Marianne deserved the truth. Yes, I said. It's personal. Gerald's wife said something to my daughter that crossed a line, a serious line, and her husband, Gerald's son, didn't defend her. What did she say? I told her, word for word, the whole dinner. The silence, the demand for an apology. When I finished, Marianne was quiet for a long moment. I'm going to enjoy this job very much, she said finally. I thought you might. By Wednesday, the restructuring was complete. Gerald Whitfield, who had walked the halls of that company like he owned the world, was now sitting in a small office on the second floor, reporting to a woman from Murfreesboro who had grown up eating government cheese. The look on his face, according to Marianne, was something she wished she could photograph. But that was just Gerald. Diane was about to find out on Thursday, and Connor, my son-in-law, the man who had let his mother tear my daughter apart and then asked her to apologize for it, Connor was going to find out exactly what kind of family he had married into. The kind that doesn't forget. The kind that doesn't forgive easily. The kind that had been sitting quietly in the background for 11 years, waiting for a reason to stop being quiet. He was about to get an education, and I was about to teach him something his expensive schools never covered. When you marry someone's daughter, you don't just marry her, you marry everything that made her. And everything that will protect her. Thursday morning was coming, and I was ready. Thursday morning arrived gray and cold. Late October in Nashville has a way of announcing that winter is coming. The leaves had mostly turned by then, carpeting lawns in orange and red, and there was a dampness in the air that settled into your bones if you stood still too long. I didn't stand still. I hadn't stood still all week. The call came around 9 in the morning. It was Marianne. We have a situation, she said. Diane Whitfield just walked into the building. She's demanding to see me. Security asked if they should let her up, and I said yes, because honestly, Robert, I wouldn't miss this for anything. I almost smiled. Almost. Call me back when she leaves. Tell me everything. Oh, I will. I hung up and poured myself a coffee. This should be interesting. 45 minutes later, Marianne called back. I could hear something in her voice I'd never heard before. Satisfaction. Deep, genuine satisfaction. Tell me, I said. She came into my office like she owned the place. Full makeup, designer outfit, pearls, the whole performance. Didn't knock, just walked right in and stood in front of my desk like she was about to fire me. And, she said, and I quote, I don't know who you think you are, but this company belongs to my family. It has belonged to my family for 3 generations, and I will not stand by while some opportunist waltzes in and humiliates my husband. I set down my coffee. What did you say? I told her to sit down. She didn't. So I said it again. I said, Mrs. Whitfield, I am going to explain something to you once, and I suggest you listen carefully, because I won't repeat myself. Marianne paused. I could picture her, sitting behind that desk, looking at Diane Whitfield with the kind of calm that only comes from having nothing to prove and nothing to lose. I told her this company hasn't belonged to her family for 11 years. It belongs to Robert Cole. Her husband ran it at his pleasure, and he ran it poorly. I told her the personal expenses alone would be enough to trigger an IRS investigation that would keep their accountants busy until their grandchildren graduate college. How did she take that? She went pale. Actually pale, like someone had drained the blood right out of her face. Then she started sputtering about lawyers and lawsuits and how we would be hearing from her attorney. And then I stood up, walked around my desk, looked her directly in the eyes. And I said, "Mrs. Whitfield, I grew up in a trailer park outside Murfreesboro. I worked 2 jobs to put myself through community college. I have been underestimated by women like you my entire life, and every single one of them eventually learned the same lesson you're about to learn. When you're standing in someone else's house, you don't get to make demands. You get to say thank you. Now please leave my office. I have actual work to do." I was quiet for a moment. Let that sink in. What did she do? She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. Then she turned around and walked out. Security escorted her to the lobby. Half the staff watched her leave. Good, I thought. Let them watch. Let them see exactly what happens when you think you're untouchable and you're not. "Robert," Marianne said, her voice softer now. That felt good. Really good. "But you know this isn't over, right? The son is going to react. The whole family is going to react. Whatever comes next is going to be messy. I know. Are you ready for that?" I looked out my window at the gray Nashville sky, thought about Lily, thought about her sitting at that dinner table, surrounded by people who were supposed to be her family, hearing her mother-in-law tell her she didn't belong. "I've been ready for this my whole life," I said. I just didn't know it until now. Thursday afternoon, the phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Marianne. It was Connor, my son-in-law, the man who had sat in silence while his mother humiliated my daughter, the man who had told Lily to apologize for having feelings. "Mr. Cole." His voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the anger underneath. "I need to speak with you." "Go ahead. What you've done to my father is unconscionable. You've humiliated him. You've humiliated my entire family. And for what? Because my mother made a comment that Lily misinterpreted?" Misinterpreted. I felt something cold settle in my chest. That word, misinterpreted. "Connor, I want you to think very carefully about what you're about to say next." "I don't need to think carefully. I need you to understand that you've made a mistake. A serious mistake. My family has lawyers. My family has connections. We will not be pushed around by what, Connor?" Silence. "By what?" Finish the sentence. "By someone from my background? By someone who doesn't belong in your world? By someone who should have known their place?" More silence. "Let me tell you something about your family's lawyers and your family's connections," I said, my voice steady as concrete. "I have been building my portfolio for 30 years. I have survived 3 recessions, 2 market crashes, and more hostile takeovers than you've had birthday parties. Your family's lawyers wouldn't know how to find me in the maze of holding companies I've constructed, and by the time they figured it out, I would have already moved 3 steps ahead." I paused. Let that sink in. "But none of that matters, Connor. None of it. Because this isn't about lawyers or money or power. This is about one thing and one thing only." "What?" "You let your mother call my daughter worthless. In front of 40 people, and you sat there. You looked at your plate. You said nothing. And then you went home and told Lily she was being too sensitive and that she should apologize for making everyone uncomfortable. That is exactly what happened. I know, because my daughter told me, sobbing, at 11 o'clock at night. And my daughter doesn't lie. She's never lied to me. She has more integrity in her little finger than your entire family has shown in the 2 years I've known you. I heard Connor take a breath, trying to regroup, trying to find his footing. Mr. Cole, I understand you're upset, but I'm not upset, Connor. Upset is what happens when someone cuts you off in traffic. Upset is what happens when the restaurant gets your order wrong. What I am is something much worse than upset. I am disappointed. Deeply, profoundly disappointed. I stood up from my chair, started pacing. I welcomed you into my family. I watched you marry my daughter, the person I love most in this world, and I thought, this is a good man. This is a man who will protect her, who will stand beside her, who will love her the way she deserves to be loved. My voice cracked slightly. I let it. And then, at the first real test, the first moment when it actually mattered, you failed. You didn't just fail to defend her, you blamed her for being hurt. You told her to apologize to the person who hurt her. Do you understand what that does to someone? Do you understand what that says about who you are? Silence. So here's what's going to happen, Connor, and I want you to listen very carefully, because this is the only time I'm going to say this. I stopped pacing, stood still. You have a choice to make. You can continue to defend your mother. You can continue to tell yourself that Lily misunderstood, that she's being dramatic, that this whole thing is an overreaction. You can take your family's side and fight me with whatever lawyers and connections you think you have. I paused. Or you can be the man I thought you were when you married my daughter. You can look at what happened honestly. You can acknowledge that your mother was wrong, that you were wrong, and that your wife deserves better than what she's gotten from your family. And if I do that, then we can talk about what comes next. But Connor, I need you to understand something very clearly. If you choose wrong, if you make my daughter's life harder than it already is, if you pressure her, if you make her feel like she has to choose between her husband and her father, I will not stop at your father's company. I will dismantle everything your family has built, every investment, every connection, every country club membership and vacation home and luxury car. I will take it apart, piece by piece, and I will make sure everyone knows exactly why. Dead silence on the other end. You have until Sunday to decide who you want to be. I hung up. Friday came and went. Saturday too. I didn't hear from Connor. Didn't hear from Lily either, which worried me more than I wanted to admit. Did I go too far? Did I make things worse for her? I barely slept Saturday night. Kept checking my phone, kept pacing my living room. The bourbon didn't help. Nothing helped. Sunday morning, around 10 o'clock, my phone buzzed. It was Lily. Dad, can you come over? There's something I need to tell you. My heart stopped. This is it. She's going to tell me to back off. She's going to choose him. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I drove faster than I should have. Pulled up to her little house in Franklin, the one Connor had bought when they got married, the one with the white shutters and the porch swing that Lily loved. Connor's car was in the driveway. I sat there for a moment, steeled myself, prepared for whatever was coming. Whatever she decides, I'll support her. She's an adult. It's her choice, even if it breaks my heart. I walked up to the front door, knocked. Lily opened it. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying, but she was smiling. Come in, Dad. I stepped inside. Connor was standing in the living room. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled. His shirt was wrinkled. He looked, for the first time since I'd known him, like a real person instead of a catalog model. Mr. Cole, he said. His voice was quiet. I owe you an apology. I didn't say anything, just waited. You were right, about everything. I sat there, at that dinner, and I let my mother say something unforgivable. And then, I made it worse. I've been thinking about it all week, and I don't know why I did it. Fear, maybe. Habit. My mother has always controlled everything, and I just I went along with it. I've been going along with it my whole life. He looked at Lily. His eyes were wet. But Lily doesn't deserve that. She deserves someone who will stand up for her, and I haven't been that person. He turned back to me. Last night, I called my mother. I told her that what she said was wrong, that Lily is my wife, and I love her, and if she can't respect that, she won't be part of our lives. He actually did it. What did she say? I asked. Connor almost laughed. She hung up on me, called back an hour later crying, saying I was choosing a stranger over my own family. I told her, Lily isn't a stranger. She's my family, the family I chose. Lily walked over and took Connor's hand. Dad, she said, I know what you did. I know about the company, about Gerald, about all of it. I nodded slowly. Here it comes. I should be mad at you. You went behind my back. You did all of this without telling me. I know. I'm sorry. She shook her head. Don't be. Nobody has ever fought for me like that. Nobody except you. My whole life, you've been there, protecting me, believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. Her eyes filled with tears. You showed Connor what it looks like when someone actually stands up for the person they love, and it made him realize he hadn't been doing that. So in a weird way, you didn't just fight for me, you fought for my marriage. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, feeling something break open inside my chest. Lily let go of Connor's hand and walked over to me, wrapped her arms around me, the way she used to when she was small, when it was just the two of us, against the world. Thank you, Daddy, she whispered. I held my daughter, let the tears come, didn't care who saw. 3 months later, Lily called me on a Tuesday evening. Her voice was different, excited, nervous. Dad, I need you to come over. I have something to show you. I drove to Franklin, walked up those same front steps, knocked on that same door. Lily opened it, holding a small black and white photograph. A sonogram. She's going to be named Margaret, Lily said, her voice trembling, after Mom. I looked at that tiny image, that miracle, that future, and I understood, finally, what all of this had been for. Not revenge, not power, not even justice. Legacy. The legacy of a man who grew up with nothing and built everything. The legacy of a woman who died too young but left behind a daughter who was kind and strong and brave. The legacy of a marriage that almost broke but became stronger instead. And now, the legacy of a little girl named Margaret, who would grow up knowing she came from people who fought for each other, who protected each other, who never, ever forgot what family meant. I held that sonogram, and I smiled. Your grandmother would have loved you, I thought, and I already do. The end.